So, how much will the Saharan air layer affect the hurricane season? So, every season, typically, especially during the early part of the season, we see the Saharan dust move into the Atlantic. And what that typically does is it definitely inhibits tropical cyclone development because it, for one thing, is that the Saharan dust blocks a lot of the shortwave radiation from the sun from heating down on the water. So that means that the sea surf temperatures, when there's a lot of Saharan dust, are typically a lot cooler than average. So it's always good to see more Saharan dust throughout the hurricane season. But what it also does is that since the Saharan dust absorbs so much heat and a lot of that shortwave radiation from the sun, it ends up becoming very warm, and it becomes so warm to a point where the moist air layer that's just below it can't rise because it's less buoyant and more dense than the air surrounding it, which would be the Saharan air layer in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, which inhibits thunderstorm activity because it needs those strong updrafts for thunderstorms and enough convective activity to develop for a tropical cyclone to develop. But also what it does is that it increases the amount of condensation nuclei in the atmosphere, which allows more clouds to exist right over the Atlantic without necessarily being developing into convective activity, which of course limits the sea surf temperatures even more so because when it's more cloudy, it's less warm in general, and that water is absorbing less of that sunlight. So it's definitely important to take a look at the Saharan air layer, and right now we do see a small layer right over the main development region, but of course we're still in the month of March. It typically peaks right around July and the June timeframe, typically during the early part of the hurricane season, and could extend even into August. And there's some cases where we could see the Saharan dust last all the way up until September, which would certainly be the best case scenario. However, like I'm showing you right now with computer models, it doesn't seem like we're going to see a lot of Saharan dust or much dry air over the main development region, which is one of the reasons why I'm expecting a historic hurricane season. So one of the things that limits the amount of Saharan dust over the Atlantic is how much precipitation there is right over the Saharan desert. And if we see more precipitation than usual during the hurricane season, then we're less likely to see a ton of Saharan dust because if we see a higher amount of rain, that will pretty much just wash away and absorb a lot of that dust in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And if we were to take a look at the 3-month average from the beginning of the hurricane season to the heart of the hurricane season at the end of August, we clearly see much more precipitation than usual is expected right over the main development region, extending into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico as well. So I do believe that this will contribute to a lot less Saharan dust this year for much of the main development region, which definitely has me concerned that we're going to see much more tropical cyclones develop than usual, along with the fact that, like I'm going to show you guys in just a second, the sea surf temperatures are historically warm right over this area, so that will only allow more of an upward motion to exist over the main development region, because warmer water, a warmer ocean means that there's a lot more that the surface air level will be a lot warmer as well, which means that the air molecules will move a lot more quickly, and that allows more water vapor to exist when the air temperature is warmer thanks to a warmer ocean water temperature. So we clearly see that and even extending into September, we're gonna see more precipitation than usual. This should help wash away a lot of Saharan dust, and in general, with more precipitation, there's just gonna be less dry air, even if it's not necessarily associated with the Saharan dust, which makes me believe we're going to be in for quite an active hurricane season. And taking a look at the sea surf temperature forecast over the next few months, it doesn't look much better. Taking a look at the MME model, which by the way is a fairly reliable model. It combines a lot of the most reliable computer models into one model. Of course, there could be some inaccuracies with the forecast we need to take into consideration, because sometimes the range could be a little bit too large between, let's say, multiple computer models. Since there's so many of them, there's bound to be more outliers when it comes comes to its forecast, where we have one extreme on one end and another extreme on the other end. So we need to take that with a grain of salt as well. But for the most part, if it's combining most of the reliable computer models, you should at least take this into consideration for sure this hurricane season. As we clearly see, it's expected to be warmer, much warmer than normal right over the northern Atlantic. And I don't think it's a surprise, because if we were to take a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies right now, the temperatures are insanely warm right over the northern Atlantic, which definitely has me concerned as we approach the hurricane season. I don't expect it to change. The computer models don't expect it to change. So we should expect overall in general a lot more moisture in the atmosphere, a lot less Saharan dust. So expect more tropical cyclones than normal this hurricane season. I could almost guarantee it at this point that at the very least it'll be above average. But I'm almost expecting this hurricane season to potentially be historic. It just seems everything is coming together for this hurricane season, just to potentially break records, even from the hurricane season, seasons in the past, like the 2020 hurricane season, the 2005 hurricane season. We're just seeing historically high sea surface temperatures for this time of the year, along with very powerful La Nina. And it isn't like other hurricane seasons, more active hurricane seasons we've seen, where there's at least some areas where it's a little bit cooler than the average. What comes to mind is 2022 hurricane season, where we did see some areas of the main development region where there were pockets where the sea surface temperatures are close to average or slightly below average. This hurricane season, it's just straight above average all across the board. So expect a lot more moisture, and this should extend into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico as well. So you guys won't be out of the woods when it comes to tropical cyclone development either. But definitely with a lot less Saharan dust this year, we could have an early start to the hurricane season, at least when it comes to the main development region, because of the amount of moisture that's going to move over the area. So when it comes to my overall forecast, will we see a lot of dry air and dust that would hinder tropical cyclone development? The answer to that is most likely not. We're gonna see a very limited amount of dry air. I really wish I could say take it with a grain of salt, but just all the signs are pointing towards just a lot more moisture to be right over the main development region, which will wash away a lot of that dry air. That will wash away a lot of the Saharan dust right over the main development region. So the Saharan dust won't be there to inhibit tropical cyclone development, unfortunately, at least to the extent of what we saw in other hurricane seasons. So it's very well possible this hurricane season could be record breaking. Make sure to take the necessary precautions throughout the Caribbean. But remember, whether this hurricane season is record breaking, above average, or close to average, or a little bit less than you expect, just remember all it takes is one storm to completely change the lives of millions and completely devastate a community. So don't underestimate the hurricane season if it, let's say, falls below your expectations, because remember, all it takes is one storm, and you definitely need to prepare for that one storm as we approach a hurricane season. So definitely stay tuned for more hurricane season updates. I'm gonna do several of these as we get closer and closer to the hurricane season to get you guys the most prepared, as that's pretty much what I'm here for. I just want to get you guys the most prepared. I want you guys to be aware of what's going on when it comes to weather and keep you guys safe. So definitely stay tuned for more updates. And if you have any specific questions when it comes to hurricane season, just make sure to comment down below, and I'll do my best to try to answer any of the questions you have for this hurricane season. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.